Where would you rank 2023 in terms of how many high-quality games we got in a single year? I think you can put it up against 1998, 2004, 2017, and 2023 would hold its own. Ranking the years against each other will be left to another video, but 2023 was that good of a year for video games, so this is our top 10 games of the year, and honestly, it's hard to pick just 10 games this year, so if your favorite game isn't on this list, it's probably not because we hated it or anything like that, unless we're talking about Hogwarts Legacy. I was going to cop out and say this is in no particular order, but I will put them in order 10 to 1. The top 3 you probably already know by now, but feel free to leave some angry comments if you disagree with this list or its rankings, and even if you agree, why not? Let's get into it. Hey, Danny with the DMGT here, your new favorite place for all things music, gaming, and tech, and if you're coming from the Baldur's Gate 3 video, thank you so much. The response to that has been awesome. I felt really good about the video when I posted it, but you never know if the YouTube algorithm will favor you or not, so once again, thank you. Now, back in July, I made a video talking about the best games of 2023 so far, to that point, the midway point through the year, and honestly, this list has changed not significantly, but it has changed quite a bit since we didn't have SpiderMan 2, Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3 I hadn't played yet, on top of everything that has launched since July, so I don't know if anyone's interested in comparing the two videos, you can do that. Okay, let's get into it. Highi Rush was a really fun time, a good action platformer that is also a rhythm game at the same time. Lots of really good licensed and original rock music. The art style is phenomenal with all the references to anime and comic book styles. And in general, the combat mechanics are engaging, they're tight, the level design was handled really well. But the reason why this game is at 10 and not higher, which I think will surprise some people, is just that the writing and the story just didn't really do that much for me. This is probably the only game on this list that I didn't really get the urge to come back and play, and it's partly because, or mostly because of the story and its writing. I don't want to say that Chai's character is annoying, even though he's a little annoying to me, okay? It just doesn't work for me. However, the gameplay mechanics and the gameplay itself was that good that it still made my top 10. Cocoon reminded me quite a bit of 2021's Death Store, not so much in the gameplay and mechanics themselves because they play very differently, but more so in the sense of how the puzzles are handled. Cocoon obviously has more of a focus on puzzles, and how the game builds upon the mechanics that you're introduced to in each level. But the music here is really good, the isometric art style is really pleasant to look at, but the almost Metroidvania style progression with abilities to solve puzzles is really satisfying even if it can get pretty confusing. And like Death Store, this is a short game, you can crush this out in like 5 or 6 hours. But each second in this 5-6 hour runtime is respectful of your time, and it's super high quality, so Cocoon gets number 9. Putting Final Fantasy 16 at number 8 is probably going to get me in trouble with some Final Fantasy fans, but as I explained in my review of Final Fantasy 16, this game just overstays its welcome. That said, this is a top 10 list, so I'm going to focus on the positives. The voice acting in this game is fantastic. Graphically, it's one of the best looking games of the year. The music, once again, in this game is incredible. The icon battles are so epic that they really carried the bulk of this game. The gameplay and combat mechanics I do think need some work. This barely is an RPG anymore, but once you get into a combo cadence that you like, it is very satisfying to start chaining all the different abilities together. Sea of Stars definitely plays into some of my own personal biases because I love these old school JRPGs that this took inspiration from, like Chrono Trigger. I got a lot of Golden Sun myself from this game, but Sea of Stars is not just a derivative JRPG that takes inspiration with its art style and music. I think it certainly stands on its own as it brings its own formula and style to the turn-based combat with its block and attack mechanics. And while unique combo abilities with your different party partners is not new, it still brings in the fresh and the flair on top of its really strong writing that I think anyone can really enjoy. I've said this before a few times this year, so if you follow me on any other social media platform, I apologize in advance because I'm gonna say it again. I'm not a huge fighting game player, but Street Fighter 6 goes hard. Not enough credit goes around these days to games that just focus on raw gameplay and your ability to kick some ass. Granted, Street Fighter 6 does incorporate a little bit of a story mode in its World Tour mode to welcome new players, but I do think that's a really intelligent way to welcome new players to learn the mechanics of your game on top of the modern controls that are now incorporated into Street Fighter 6, but even that doesn't mean that you're just going to have an easy time steamrolling even experienced players in online play, because the modern controls will lock you to a certain playstyle, so in order for you to actually adapt and get better, you're going to have to learn the classic controllers, and that makes you a better player. The character roster, the music, the art style, it all just works for me, so Street Fighter 6 is my 6th spot. Now, I know that a decent amount of time on the internet the last couple of weeks since the Game Awards has been spent dunking on Spider-Man 2 fans, and Spider-Man 2 fans, this game being at number 5 doesn't mean that it's bad. But I really want to focus on the work that Insomniac did here, because on the technical side, this game is a marvel, no pun intended. Traversal is so much more satisfying. I can't even go back to 2018 Spider-Man. Those transitions between Peter and Miles works really well. I am a certified hater of gadget wheels, so having input combos for the different gadgets I think is way better and makes combat much more fluid. And spoilers really quick, while the spectacle of going from Miles versus Lee, Peter versus Kraven, Miles versus Peter, and then playing as Venom is one of the most fun gameplay sequences I played all year, it definitely sacrificed some of its story for that spectacle. That said, I'm not even mad at the 25-hour platinum that I put into this game. I still think it was worth every penny of the $70 that I paid for it. So just because it's not my game of the year doesn't mean that I had any less fun playing it, and it's still one of the strongest games of the year. And just like Final Fantasy 16 at the 8th spot, some of you are going to say that I'm insane for putting Diablo IV at the 4th spot, but let me explain. I am quite aware of the missteps and updates that the Blizzard team has done with Diablo IV in the months since release. However, looking back at its first month, it's all anyone could ever talk about, and I think that's strong enough to keep this at the 4th spot. We're talking 35 hours of campaign gameplay before you get to the end game. That's 10 more hours than platinuming Spider-Man 2. So while Blizzard absolutely deserves criticism for the post-launch updates, do you seriously mean to tell me that an entire month of this game dominating the gaming space, that's nearly 10% of the year, is not enough to keep this in the top 5? Besides some of its problems in the endgame, which has already been addressed or is being addressed, I still believe that the base campaign is strong, the writing in that base campaign is strong, the voice acting is strong, the audio design I think is impeccable. It could go toe-to-toe with Alan Wake 2 and Highi Rush, which won that award at the Game Awards. Look, you're not going to see me shed a single tear for Bobby Kotick or any of the other executive leadership over at Activision Blizzard on their way out post-Microsoft acquisition. However, even though I agree with a lot of the criticism for Diablo IV, its post-launch, and its microtransactions, it got really popular on the internet to hate on this game, but I still believe there's a strong enough game here to warrant its 4th spot. I really struggled deciding on which games to give silver and bronze to, but ultimately landed on Alan Wake 2 in my 3rd spot. I've already gushed plenty about these games in my Baldur's Gate 3 video, but I'll do it again. Alan Wake 2 is weird in all the best ways possible. The musical section of this game, I'm still gonna pump out that video, don't worry. The way you uncover the narrative of this story via Saga Anderson's mind place and its mystery solving, and then Alan Wake's story writing, light mechanics, and scene changing, it's just also satisfying and serves as an example of the right way to subvert expectations in a survivor horror story-based game. Now, I will be the first person to tell you that I didn't love the gun combat mechanics in this game. It just feels clunky, especially coming off of Control. Luckily, this game understands and knows that combat isn't its primary mechanic, the puzzle solving and the mystery solving is, so I will continue to rave about this game, and if this is your favorite game of the year, I'd say that's totally valid. Tears of the Kingdom is a really, really good video game, folks. I don't know why people keep screaming about a Nintendo bias and this and that. No, this one does what Breath of the Wild set out to do, and it nailed it finally. The philosophy of choose your own adventure and kind of approach the game in whatever format you want, but via its building and puzzle solving mechanics and the physics engine in this game is nothing short of extraordinary. Now, is this game held back by being on the Nintendo Switch? It 100% is. This device is so underpowered that you can definitely see the hiccups in gameplay and frame drops during combat, and in a way it definitely sticks to its guns a little bit too much in the sense of combine any items that you want and use the physics engine to a fault, so combat fluidity is sacrificed a little bit in order to like open up menus and combine the right things and choose the right weapons with its breakable weapons. I won't rant about that in this video, but its freedom of choice and exploration and improved traversal definitely makes up for those cons, and I think that's a reason why some people are still choosing this for their game of the year. I said it in my review and I'll say it again, this game hit in a way that Breath of the Wild never did. It finally all came together to bookend this iteration of The Legend of Zelda. And before we get into the DMGT's Game of the Year, here are some honorable mentions of games that I had a fun time with but just couldn't make the cut. Chia, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Armored Core 6, this one hurt the most and not put in my top 10 list, and hell, I'll even throw Starfield in there because I did end up putting in like 100 hours into that game, even though I'm not going to come back to it. Look, there's a whole ass 15-minute video on my channel about why Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. The DMGT's Game of the Year for 2023 is Baldur's Gate 3. What can I say about this game that hasn't already been said? This game is that guy, pal.
You're that guy.
Having a game that incorporates the freedom of decision making in a more methodical and slower paced approach, I think is really refreshing in the year and a time where everything is spent on really strong narrative or a bunch of action adventure gameplay. Not that there's anything wrong with those types of games, but Baldur's Gate 3 really scratched a niche that just hadn't been scratched in quite a long time. The value alone and the amount of free content that we're getting post-launch is enough to make this game of the year, even if it wasn't quite as deep as this game is, but it is that deep, so yeah, it's a no-brainer. This is game of the year. Larian Studios, kudos to you all for making arguably the greatest RPG of all time, and we can really say that now that we're at least 5 months into the launch of Baldur's Gate 3. And with that said, I'm gonna go start a fresh campaign again, because that's what people do. We just start new campaigns because there's that much story content that we have to get through. Alright, do you agree, disagree with any of our placements or games? Who are you mad that I snubbed on this list? Let me know what your favorite games of the year were. I want to hear all your top 10, your top 20. Leave however many games you want to gush about in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Once again, I am Danny with the DMHT. I'll catch you next time.